life is now forever changed.
Fires are going to go on forever.
They're burning hotter, they're burning faster, they're burning hundreds of thousands more acres.
It's been horrible. The winds and everything are killing us.
There was so many flames and everything, and we got really, really emotional.
This is the worst by far, the fire on steroids.
My home is the only home that survived.
Like it's gray, it's just moonscape.
This area is drought stricken.
All of what we've done in the past practices is exactly what's gotten us here today.
Droughts are going to go on forever.
We can't guarantee that that water that you're so used to is going to be there forever.
Basically, we're getting about 30% of our water and find the additional 2/3 water I need to keep my trees alive.
This tank here is filled with wastewater.
This is real, and this is happening.
It's part of the deal of living in California.
January, February, and March, that is Californians' typical rainy season.
We haven't had much rain for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Overall, it's been very dry.
We've seen the driest rainfall years than we've ever seen since record keeping began in Los Angeles, and that was back in 1877.
I don't remember talking so much about drought. About 85% of the state practically under some extreme or exceptional drought conditions. I don't remember talking about year after year of drought and below average seasonal rainfall. Fires that are occurring all year round practically. It's definitely a different time.
Those fires are getting bigger every year, and it's becoming more taxing on the resources, and it's something that we need to be aware of.
Since 2015, 10 of California's most destructive wildfires have happened in just a short period of time.
This home right here, wow, yeah. I'm not optimistic at this point. I hope that they can save this home, but this thing is really taking off.
Just recently, we had the coastal fire down in Orange County. It started during the afternoon, but it was aided by a sea breeze, a flow of air off the ocean, cool, moist air blowing up against these hillsides. It didn't matter. Those hillsides were so dried out by years of drought, tinder dry vegetation. It didn't matter. It burned that hill, up that hill, quick as pie, and it went right for those homes.
It's devastating. It's shocking.
A drought is common, especially in California's history, but it is essentially a prolonged period with very limited precipitation. And so what happens when we have drought is we don't have as much water for our communities or our farms, our economy.
I look at water as the most fundamental element that we need, right? Like, you cannot live without water.
Water is life, and without it, there is no us.
I think it's the most precious resource that we have, and the one that we should be paying the most attention to.
I don't know if we have gotten comfortable or took it for granted that somebody out there would always make sure that the water would be there for us, and we could turn on the tap and water our lawns and for whatever we need. And things have changed.
Our main source of water is the Los Angeles Aqueduct that brings water from the eastern Sierras. In addition to that, we can buy imported water from the Metropolitan Water District. That could be via the State Water Project or the Colorado River Aqueduct. We're also working on stormwater capture projects where when it does rain in LA, we'll have an opportunity then to capture that water and collect it and then be able to percolate it into the ground and recharge the aquifers so that we'll have more water available in the future.
I get asked all the time, we have rain. Why can't we just get all the rain and capture that and use that? Part of the problem is urbanization.
So back in the day when it would rain, water would naturally go into the ground. Now because we have everything paved and all the homes and streets, less water is able to percolate naturally. So we need to help Mother Nature by building infiltration basins and projects that can capture the water and be able to concentrate how we get that water into the ground.
It used to be that it would snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we could pretty much predict how much runoff we were going to get from that snowfall. What has happened over the last few years is because it's so dry, when that snow melts, it gets absorbed in the soil rather than running off into the aqueducts and coming down to Southern California.
Water content of ½ an inch.
What's different about this drought, and it's more of what California is going to experience in the future, is longer dry periods.
It's just concerning that we really could run out of water.
Definitely humans are partly responsible to our drought conditions, and we can talk about climate change.
There's always this kind of argument with climate change, whether it's real or not. You don't have to look any further than really your own backyard to see that our climate is changing. And with our wind conditions changing.
Climate change doesn't just mean global warming. I think that those two terms have been used interchangeably. And I think what we have to remember is that even though Southern California is trending warmer and drier, other parts of the country are seeing more significant precipitation, more flooding. That's what global climate change is.
Where climate change comes in is that it's exacerbated, it's amplified all of these conditions.
Climate change, and many agencies know it, will be water issues where you're now going to get too much rain and you're going to get flooding, you're going to have scarcity of water, or you're going to have no water.
Climate change is the all-purpose defense to deflect the conversation. Whatever the cause of the current climate change is, the climate has changed dramatically for centuries, as far back as we can research. Droughts are absolutely normal here. Rainfall can be wildly erratic, and governments have to plan not for just a 2-year or 5-year or 10-year drought, but what if it really goes on for decades and decades?
What we are really trying to avoid in the water industry is that when you turn on your tap, that pressure is a lot lower, or in some cases, water just won't come out. That's what we're trying to avoid.
I don't know how we're sleeping at night. I mean, anyone paying attention to what's going on?
The problem in our state is that we have 40 million people, and even an average year of rain and snow isn't enough.
We have known about these conditions, yet we didn't prepare. And I think that's the thing that I find frustrating.
There has not been very much work done by the government to increase the supply, to increase the storage. So yeah, you're going to get a shortage.
I'm a little more optimistic than most. Mother Nature is still bountiful, but she's not operating like she did 50 years ago. Hell, she's now operating like she did 10 years ago. And we have to reconcile that.
We knew climate change would stress our water supplies, and we've been preparing for it, but we did not know it would happen this fast. This means we are attempting to adapt to climate change in real time.
Currently in Los Angeles, our residents consume approximately 112 gallons per person per day, which, by the way, is probably one of the lowest amongst the entire industry. Our goal is to get our gallons per person per day, or GPCD, down to approximately 105.
50% of that water that goes to a household is used outdoors. That's water that we spent money on treating it for body contact use for consumption, and it's being used for outdoors.
Most of the water that our residential users use is on outdoor landscape.
Today, this Mid-City Heights neighborhood is under brand new water restrictions. This is impacting all LADWP customers and how often they can water their lawns, like this one here. And it's being restricted from 3 to 2 days a week.
What's really important for Californians and folks in the LA area is to ask themselves, whether or not they need that lawn. If the only person that walks on the lawn is maybe your mail carrier or the person who mows the lawn, then does it really have a purpose?
Don't use water to hose down the sidewalks or your driveway. We actually would encourage you to use the old-fashioned way, which is using a broom. If you need to wash your car, we recommend that you take your vehicle to a commercial car wash because they are able to recycle that water.
Looking at our reserves and looking at the predictions for the climate and climate change, we just want everybody to do their part so that it helps us guarantee that when you turn on that tap, it's always going to be there, or there's always going to be bottled water on the shelves.
There's the meteorological drought, and then there's the socioeconomic drought. The meteorological drought is, hey, we just haven't seen enough rain and snow. We're well below average, things are drying up. But then there's the socioeconomic component to drought.
The burden is not falling equally along everyone in the state that uses a lot of water. The restrictions are not spread out equally.
The economy of California is driven by agriculture, by coastal industry, by tech up in Silicon Valley. All of these things require water.
The biggest consumers of water in our state are the farmers. All of those farmers are reliant upon the water to feed those crops.
Now, farming is something we're going to have to talk about because those farmers need water. We need to rethink some of our farming practices. Almond trees, they require an enormous amount of water.
Almonds happen to be very nutrient dense, and anything that's high protein usually takes a lot more water. It just takes more water to produce proteins. And not only that, that tree, it actually pulls carbon from the air. So it is, yes, using water, but it's actually serving many purposes other than actually just producing that almond.
When we talk about farmers, they're having to watch their crops die because they don't have enough water to water all of their plants.
We actually let a third of one of our orchards die because we didn't have enough water to water it. And then at the end of the season, we ripped the whole thing out.
And what happens? It trickles down. And now the migrant farm workers are out of jobs. Small towns like Fireball, they're losing jobs and they need some help.
If there is no water, there is no work. And for us farm workers, how are we going to support the family?
Our farmers in California are really bearing the brunt.
It's an economic disaster. We don't plant crops, we don't have jobs, we don't produce food.
We've been in Riverside. I think it was 1960 we came up here.
His father sold the ranch he grew up on. It was in El Toro. They lived on a crossroads, and at the time he farmed watermelon on it. He would drop me off on the roadside, and I would sell watermelons as cars went by before we got married. Then we got married, and after his father sold the ranch, he needed employment. So he found inexpensive land up here. We had a little fruit stand here, and we used to sell out of the back of our car, our station wagon.
I don't think people understand the ritual we go through. Everything is on mini sprinklers or drippers. We have water sensors throughout the groves that measures your water content. Monitoring the soil, it's not like you guess and say, okay, it's been a week now, I'm going to turn my water on. Everything is regulated, all metered, regulated, so it gets exactly the water it needs.
We waste nothing, nothing. You can't afford to waste water at the cost we're paying.
So next year, what I've decided to do is I'm taking my oldest and least production citrus, I'm going to let those die next year and take that water and keep some of the other growths alive. Well, we need in this water issue some leadership. Someone's got to take control and be a leader. We don't seem to have that right now.
For the business community, manufacturing also requires a significant amount of water and high quality water. So we need in our commercial and industrial sectors to make sure that we are also using water as efficiently as possible.
Most of the new buildings that you see being built are being built with water conservation elements built into them. So they tend to be extremely water efficient in their operations already, because as part of the building process and the building permit, they were required to implement water conserving measures.
We're going to have to feel the strain that we're going to feel. And that goes to businesses that they need to conserve as well.
Believe it or not, many of the large venues that you see that have these big lawns are using recycled water. So if you drive by a large field and it's green, don't necessarily assume that they're wasting drinkable water, because many times they're irrigating with recycled water, which we encourage.
Golf courses and some of the city parks, they've already made the investments many years ago to switch from using drinking water for irrigation purposes to recycled water.
We've really brought over with us in the United States this real fascination and desire to have these lush green lawns that were frankly an artifact of the United Kingdom, and we're starting to realize with more urgency that that landscape actually doesn't really match our climate and with these longer extended droughts.
There are various sources of water: rainfall, recycled water, water that's been used already.
Today I'm proud to announce that 100% of the wastewater in this treatment plant by 2035 will be recycled, which will mean that 100% of all of the wastewater in the city of Los Angeles will be recycled.
Only wastewater comes down to a wastewater treatment plant, like here at Terminal Island.
There's definitely a smell here. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was eye-opening. 15 million gallons of wastewater around the surrounding area, and watching it go through the different stages of filtration.
Here we have this primary tank. We allowed big solids to settle down into the bottom, and there are flights that actually scrapes the bottom of the tank, and we remove those solids. Water's getting cleaner. From the primary treatment process to the secondary treatment process, you could see how clean it is.
There was a huge difference, even from the first to the second, and then after the third, you could really tell how clean that water was getting.
This is the product water now. After going through all the conventional and advanced treatment,
there's not going to be one answer for the water shortage or for the drought conditions, for the need of water. This is going to be part of several, I believe, solutions.
By the time it comes out of the wastewater treatment plant, in some cases, the quality of that water is about as good as the surface water that we're importing from these faraway locations.
I believe many of these municipalities are doing the best they can to treat wastewater. They are keepers of the water, and I do believe they are making every effort they can to preserve water, to clean water, to find new ways. But there's so much more that we could be doing.
No one disputes that at times it can smell like an outhouse. In fact, just today, the Air Quality Management District announced it had slapped the plant with 6 notices of violation over the odor.
We want to know what you're exposing us to, because we need to do what's best for our families. If this is dangerous, we need to get out of Dodge.
The QMD website has the ambient monitoring within the city of El Segundo that shows the air quality.
It's not just ice pick headaches, rashes, breathing, using inhalers and antihistamines. What is it that we're being exposed to?
I think it's incumbent upon us, where we can no longer just, without thought, look at what we're throwing down the toilet.
The least expensive water we can use in Southern California is pumping it out of the ground. The next least expensive water is imported water that we import from Northern California and Colorado. Way down at the bottom of the list is desalinated water.
Desalination is part of the puzzle, but it still is very expensive, and that's really driven by high energy use.
You're taking highly saline water and you're pushing it through membranes that require a lot of energy in order to be able to actually clean the water. Also, it has an impact on marine life. A lot of the environmental groups have a lot of concerns with the impact that it has on the ocean.
They have many desalination plants in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, and in Israel. So we could have a chain of desalination plants all along the coast.
The California Coastal Commission has unanimously rejected the construction of a large desalination plant in Huntington Beach.
We do not need desalination because the technology is not there yet.
Killing sea creatures and fragile microscopic sea life with a giant intake valve, taking in ocean water into this desalination plant.
Cumulative cancer risks and residential exposure scenarios. The numbers are out there. We have to think about the residents.
The facility threatens billions of marine organisms, and the massive energy costs associated would contribute to greenhouse gas emissions.
The latest United Nations IPCC report said that desalination from fossil fuels is maladaptation, meaning it is a problem masquerading as a solution.
This is not the solution to the water crisis, desalination, but it is a significant part of our effort. Desal is one part. Stormwater capture, wastewater capture, one water. Being more abundant in our mindset. There's plenty of water that flows through, that just flows right out, that we can reuse, that is high quality, safe, and affordable.
We cannot continue to bury our heads in the sands. This is not a fire drill. We're here at the end of the line. I want everybody to own that we all have a part in how we got here, and we all have a part in how we're going to change and conserve. And it's going to be a little different way of life. We need to rethink how we treat water.
There are a lot of crews. They are doing their jobs and they're working really hard.
You can see more fire engines, more fire apparatus coming up.
Because it's been so dry, because we've had these continued drought years, really the fire season is all year.
Right now, it's still a very active fight.
We call it now fire year instead of fire season.
The firefighters, you can see they're doing the best they can here to put the flames, but they are so close.
The firefighters spend a lot of time away from home on extended shifts, 24, 36, 48 hours without rest.
We just got the notice right now to evacuate.
Grabbing computers, grabbing whatever we can.
Make sure you get all your belongings that you love.
You'll be a good girl. This is very scary. They're panicked because they know that the fire's going on. It's one of those bizarre, surreal things that you think you're watching it and you're seeing it, but you're still not really comprehending.
I don't have anything to go back to, you know what I mean? But I just want to be here.
Wildfires are greater magnitude, more acres, more intense.
I'm gonna stay until it's beautiful again.
We're seeing more fires because of drought.
It's hotter, it's drier, more of the moisture that we do receive is evaporating into the air or it's getting sucked into the soil. All of these things are being amplified by the heat and the lack of moisture in our environment.
Our fire season used to be a couple of months, summer and into fall.
We now recognize that fire season is much longer.
And the fires just seem to get bigger and quicker.
We've had so many fires that we start to forget some of the names. We've had the Blue Ridge Fire, the Woolsey Fire, the Thomas Fire, the Apple Fire, the Station Fire. I could go on and on.
We are surrounded by flames on both sides. You can see the property owners here are watering down as much as they can, but this is a really bad situation right now. You can see the flames on that side.
As reporters, we have to prepare. We have our protective gear always in our vehicles. We've got that mask ready to go at any moment because a fire could break out any day of the week.
They're worried about the wind. There are a lot of hot spots out there.
The vast majority of fires are man-made fires. There's some sort of trigger. a high-powered line gets blown down by Santa Ana winds, a car backfires, or a car catches fire along the 91 through the Santa Susana River Pass and bursts into flames and catches that vegetation on fire.
The energy companies, look at all the neglect and malfeasance over the last few years. How many fires have they started? Many of the big fires were started by the electric companies simply because they do shoddy work. And their lines always fall, short out, they fall onto the grass, they fall onto the trees, their towers fall down, there's disconnections, there's sparks coming out of their transformer. Whoa! Whoa!
Because we have this lack of water. The vegetation just doesn't have the moisture.
That means the smallest spark, a cigarette discarded, tool being used by the side of the road is enough to have that fuel ignite and spread rapidly.
That tree that fell on our line is one of 8 million trees that are in strike distance to our lines. This is an extraordinary problem.
It is creating anxiety for me thinking about how we put those fires out.
We're doing some line construction training with our hand crew. We go out and we remove the vegetation from the fire's edge to stop the fire spread.
We have abysmal forest management. We jumped on all kinds of silly, trendy ways to tend to the forests, not clearing out old dead trees and the underbrush, stuff that the Native Americans knew how to do hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We came in and decided, no, they're all wrong, we're all right. No, they were right, we were wrong, and we're paying the price for it.
These men and women are learning here might save your life or save your house.
Once we burn a plot like this, obviously, fire can't come through here twice. So it'll be several years before this land will have vegetation on it again where we'll reburn. So we have a lot of properties around here that could have been impacted by wildfire had it happened naturally. By being prescribed, we're able to come through and do it in a controlled environment so that is not a threat to these local homes.
This is real world. There's only so much training that we could get in the classroom that's really applicable. So being able to get the tools in the firefighters' hands out here and to use those in the field is paramount to our success.
The Los Angeles Fire Department Command Center now has software that allows them to model what the conditions are like in those fire-prone areas, in those dry fuel areas.
Our weather stations, our raw stations, give us real-time weather on the ground, the temperature, the humidity, the fuel moisture, the wind, and then the gusts as well. What we use is a program called wildfire, and it's been a game changer in how we operate and how we model fire predictions to deploy the appropriate resources and, if necessary, conduct wireless emergency alerting to notify the public to either shake and shout or begin evacuations.
They have automated weather stations that are monitoring the atmospheric conditions, monitoring the fuel load, how dry that fuel is on the hillside next to the Hollywood side, so they know what they're going to be dealing with. They're trying to get as much resources as possible in place, add to those resources, both aerial and boots on the ground, so that they can tackle these changing conditions.
Firefighters that have been trained to be dispatchers, so they're able to take their experience from being the firefighters, those first responders, boots on the ground, and utilize that experience to extract as much useful information from that caller and relay that to the responding resources to make the best decisions even before we get on scene. And so that's the benefit of our organization, having the ability to utilize these dispatchers' fire experience, being in the field, understanding what it is like to respond to these types of calls.
Nearly 12,000 firefighters are battling the front lines right now of nearly 24 major wildfires and complexes in the can see from our statewide fire map, these fires go all the way from the north part of the state down to the south, from coast to the eastern Sierra.
A gigafire, I never even said that until 2020. It was the first time we saw a fire consume 1 million acres. That was the August complex fire.
We feel a deep sense of responsibility here in the state of California because of the smash mouth realities of climate change, not just the issues of the acuity and frequency and duration of these wildfires, but also what's happening with this mega drought over the entire west coast of the United States.
It's devastating to watch more and more of these fires and more families and homes torn apart, to see the loss that they go through. It's really gut-wrenching.
We still got each other. It's still hard. Watching your own family, your own friends lose their homes, just gotta pray.
When we're dealing with hot temperature, dry conditions, and especially those Santa Ana winds, forget it. We could be in very big trouble. That fire risk is elevated all the way to the top.
These are the strongest Santa Ana winds so far of the season, a 96-mile-per-hour wind gust. The winds don't cause the fire, they allow it to spread rapidly. This fire we're watching burning close to homes. This is the Blue Ridge fire here. As that air is pushed through, it's funneled through, it explodes as it comes out of the canyon there, and the velocities increase.
Are you scared? Yeah, I mean, it's right there, so it's really close.
Part of the reason we're seeing more residential fires is because of the increase in population in remote areas. Developers are now building in wilderness locations in areas that are considered more flammable.
We didn't think anything unusual was going to happen. The Santa Ana winds started to blow as they often do that time of the year.
My daughter works down the street at Costco, and she called and said, "Hey, is there a fire by us?" And I said, "No, we're good."
Then we started to see the sky get dark very quickly, and then as we looked outside, our neighbors were peeking over our fence, and then we started to see ash falling from the sky.
And it was like instant reaction. Run downstairs. Roger, get off the phone. We have a fire. Run into the garage. Raji, get your shoes on, and we got to get the pigs and get Duchess in the car, and we got to go.
When it started, we thought, well, okay, this will be a precaution. We'll maybe leave for a little bit. We'll be back. So as we were driving down our hill, we have a Ring video camera. And I remember getting a Ring video feed on my phone, and I saw the firemen coming in the front door with ladders and with hoses, and I thought, uh-oh. We thought, well, maybe they're just taking precautions. Maybe they're wetting the roof.
We are on Blue Ridge right now, and if you look over my shoulder, you can see where a home is still smoldering. Fire crews jumped in right there to save that house. They were still trying to contain it from spreading to other nearby houses.
You just don't want to believe that it's actually happening. You're thinking, I've seen this before on TV or another show, so this isn't really happening.
It is your house, and you think, well, it can't be happening to me. It's a bad dream.
We all came out unhurt, and that's all we could want, is that everyone is safe.
The loss is just memories and material things, while it certainly doesn't equate to what you'd feel if you lost a loved one or
holidays where you don't have the things that are meaningful. And that can be difficult.
As a homeowner, You should always prepare. Make sure your property is well maintained. Make sure there is no dry brush in the area that could ignite.
We're always talking about brush clearance. That's huge. That helps us when we show up to your home or your neighborhood when there's a fire nearby. And so it allows each individual person's home defensible space without the fire department having to do much to prep it before a fire comes through.
2 weeks before the fire, everything was cut down. All the weeds were whacked. We have had the fire department come through, say, cut everything back. So we did all of that. We had plenty of vegetation around the house that wasn't flammable.
If you think you're prepared, you're not. There's actually more you can do. Checking your insurance. When's the last time you checked to see what your coverages are, how they work?
Make sure you have the right coverages, because if you don't, you're going to be hurting when it actually happens.
We've been asked by many people, why would you rebuild in the same spot? I mean, you live on this hillside, which is prone to wildfires. Frankly, I think everywhere in Southern California is prone to wildfires now. We're going to take even more precautions. The house we're building isn't going to have an attic. All the eaves will be enclosed. We're going to put a fire suppression system around the perimeter of the property.
Yeah. Sometimes, no matter what you do, you're still going to get caught up in things that are completely out of your control.
I think living through the loss of a home or a disaster like this certainly teaches you to be prepared, even if you think, what are the odds?
And you have to have a great base of support, whether it's your friends, an amazing community, church source, and let the people love you, take care of you, and help you out.
So many people we didn't even know, that reached out and offered to help. Neighbors that we never met would walk down and offer to bring us food or those kinds of things. I want to be sure that while this was a terrible tragedy, it was uplifting to me to see there's still good in people.
I know God has a plan for us.
No surprise that people pack the beaches over the holiday weekend.
Today is day 7 of 100-degree heat.
We are breaking records year after year, being the hottest year on record from the year before. So we have got to change the way we do things.
Climate change isn't just a Southern California problem. It's not just a California problem. It's not just a national problem. It's a global problem.
Make no mistake, the changes that we're seeing, these accelerated impacts of climate change, were not anticipated 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. So it stands to reason that we're going to have to continue to adapt our approach and our management.
Not just drought, but we've seen a lot of wildfires. I think our entire population is experiencing a degree of emergency fatigue. But that's not the moment in time to retreat.
The time to prepare for a drought is not during a drought. I'm actually not that intensely motivated by the current drought. What I'm focused on is how do we build the infrastructure that we need for future droughts? The drought that's in 6 years, 7 years, 15 years, that will likely be much more intense, potentially longer, hotter, drier than it is now. How do I get that infrastructure in place? Often takes years, 5 years or more, to plan and build a water supply project. That's what I'm focused on right now.
Science and the data leads us to now understand that we will lose 10% of our water supply by 2040. If all things are equal, we will lose an additional 10% of our supply by 2040. As a consequence of that deeper appreciation, that deeper understanding, we have a renewed sense of urgency to address this issue head on.
People are tired of the warnings. They're tired of being told that the world is ending. Climate change is going to destroy us, and droughts are going to destroy us, or it's going to be hurricanes, or it's tornadoes, or it's this, or it's that. And now most people I know laugh when they hear this stuff. And that's the disconnect between the media and the people.
California needs to be more pro-business
we're getting too liberal. You need someone in charge of the water program for the state of California.
I think we have the same goals. We want more water available for everybody. And I think instead of fighting each other over every drop, it's time to actually collaborate.
You know, the fact that we're not going to have enough snowpack. And by the way, I think with climate change, it's been demonstrated that there are many years that we're going to have more water than we know what to do with. And in other years, we will not have enough. So we need to know how to conserve that water and store that water on those years when we have excess water so that we can use it on years we don't have enough.
Our young children are being educated on climate change, and they're making big changes. So I think with all of that and the work that our scientists and engineers are doing, there's absolutely hope that we can go back on some of the damage we've done to our planet.
One of the things that we're very proud of is that we have a program to educate kids, K through 12, starting early on the importance of water efficiency. These are kids that by the time we're done with many of our projects, they will be ratepayers. And understanding better their responsibility when it comes to water use, I think is extremely important in making sure that we have enough water so that we can be a resilient, reliable, and sustainable city.
We still have the same water system from the 60s, yet our state has changed. And so I'm really advocating for there to be a statewide coalition of experts that can look at the whole state and say, where can we have additional storage facilities? Where can we have above ground reservoirs, below ground storage facilities? Where can we create connections? Where does desalination make sense, economic sense, environmental sense? What are all of the tools in the toolbox, and how do we put them together? And how do we as a state maximize the benefits of those assets so that the entire people of California and the environment of California and the economy of California are as strong going into the future as we can possibly make it.
The atmosphere that circulates around our planet belongs to all of us, from the far other side of the planet to right here in Southern California. So everybody needs to come together and adhere to these changes and to make those modifications so that we can stop what's happening right now.
I'm mentally drained. Mentally and emotionally drained.
Change. Is it possible? Sure. Is it going to take a lot of time and effort? Yes. Is it going to take compromise? Absolutely.
Praying for the people, praying for the animals, praying for the firefighters.
But we can't afford anymore not to act. We as individuals cannot afford anymore not to act, to respond to a critical situation and realize that we're going to have to take incremental steps and look for solutions and implement them all the way down the line now.
It's frightening to think that if we don't change our behavior now, what we're going to leave for our children, what kind of planet are we going to leave behind? What kind of home are we going to have here in Southern California when we look at the kind of destruction that we're already seeing related to the fire, the water shortage? Those are scary thoughts. So we need to make a change. We really do.
As Californians, I think we need to actually learn to live and operate ourselves in our personal lives using less water. I think we can still have beautiful yards. I think we still have beautiful spaces and enjoy California with using a little bit less water.
There's no certainty in weather. What is true is the trend that we keep speaking of. Shorter wet periods, longer dry periods, longer lasting heat waves, even though they may be mixed in with a couple months of good precipitation and cool weather, but the long-term trend is towards warmer and drier here in Southern California and across all of California, and we need to adapt to those conditions.